if you don't have a clear vision of who you are, who you desire to be, what you want for your business, it's going to fall apart. Even as believers, even as, people who believe in prayer, it's like when we live in a world that is a capitalistic world and it's run by money, why wouldn't we want to match our prayer with how the world is running? You don't apply for a job and say, oh, I don't want to pimp my skills and ask them for a check. Like, no. You use your gifts so that you can create abundance in your life.
What do you want women, especially women of faith, to know about money and wealth building?
I want them to know that...
Hey guys, welcome back to Trust in the Process. I'm your host, Debra, and today we have a very exciting interview episode. You guys know I love these. I love being able to sit down and really dig deep into someone's story. And today's story is a good one. It is a juicy one. I'm excited to introduce to you Maya Elious. Maya Elious is a personal branding strategist that teaches entrepreneurs how to master their message, package their expertise, and build a profitable online brand. She's taught hundreds of students and clients how to successfully launch online courses, workshops, memberships, and coaching programs so they can increase their revenue and build a profitable business. Her main mission is to help women initiate wealth building by monetizing their gifts. She's been featured in publications like Black Enterprise, Forbes, and Business Insider, teaching other entrepreneurs how to effectively build their personal brand. She enjoys encouraging women to use their voice and share their message in the form of online content in order to reach more people, whether through her accelerator program, Built to Impact, or her signature live event, Impact Weekend. From building $35 websites to building a multi-million-dollar coaching company, Maya Elious is proof of what happens when you give God something to work with. And today, she'll be sharing more of her story. So let's get into it. This is Trust in the Process. Maya, welcome to Trust in the Process. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. So we're going to do things a little bit differently on this episode. This is something I rarely do, but I felt led, maybe if I should use the Christian lingo, to kick things off with a quick fire round, actually. Just a fun and playful way for us to get to know a little bit more about Maya outside of, the boss babe that she is. So we've got about 5 questions here. Quick fire, so I'm not going to give you much time, of course, that's the point. But we'll get to know you on a bit of a different level. So I'm going to kick off with the first one, which is homebody or we outside?
Homebody.
Ah, okay. Summer or winter?
Summer.
Yeah, I had a feeling you'd say that. I was just like,
sure.
She's made for the summer.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, product-based business or service-based business?
Service.
This one I'm going to ask why.
Okay. And I didn't know if you wanted me to elaborate because I'm like, oh, it's rapid fire. Let me just quick.
No, you're great.
Service for sure because it's just more profitable. It's more profitable because there's typically no or not a lot of overhead for a service-based business unless like you need like a laptop or a camera if you're a photographer, depending on what the service-based business is. And services are typically higher than products. And again, it's going to be depending what the product is. So just based on the fact that there's lower overhead and higher revenue, you're going to be more profitable.
Already dropping the gems. This was not even the plan, but let's go there. Love that. Okay, so this is a fitness question. Cardio or strength training?
Strength training for sure.
So we prefer to lift.
Body.
Yes. Gotta get them gains.
You are getting the curves with the cardio. Okay, I need to be lifting. We go see these curves.
I know, that's right. Yeah, you run too much, you'll run the curves away, and that's not what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
And final question: luxury shopping trip or luxury holiday?
Ooh, I'm gonna say luxury holiday. I like experiences more than I like things.
Yeah. I'm with you on that as well.
Yeah,
Experiences last longer because they actually live with you here, So
exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love
And I'm
that.
like a minimalist. I'm gonna end up throwing some of that stuff away or giving it away anyway.
We're just gonna go on Vinted, so yeah.
Exactly.
Love that. Okay, so Maya, thank you once again for joining us for this episode. As I was sharing with you earlier, I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation with you. As someone that's followed you for years, I've been somewhat privy to your growth and your journey. I've been able to observe the ways that you've kind of evolved as a businesswoman and evolved in your offering as well, but still stay true to who you are. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I just want to kick things off by actually taking things way, way back to childhood, right? Because I think that's where it all begins for a lot of us in terms of who we are today. So let's go back. Let's go back to childhood, Maya, maybe baby Maya, maybe that far. Growing up, what was your relationship with money like? And how, if at all, has it evolved to today?
Growing up, my relationship with money. I think as a child, I didn't think about money that much, which I think can be a good thing because I never really saw my parents struggle financially. So I'm grateful that I never saw a financial struggle. And I don't know, for some reason, I have a memory. I think I was like 6 or 7. And I remember one of my neighbors saying, like, did you know that $100 isn't rich? And I was like, what? It's not? Like, I thought $100 was a lot of money. Kind of like how entrepreneurs would think $100,000 is a lot of money. And then you get it and you're like, okay, wait a minute, the way taxes are set up and inflation. But I just remember kind of getting my first concept of what was a lot of money versus what wasn't a lot of money. But after that, I didn't have any other thought process around it because I didn't have money for myself. So
Yeah, I think sometimes when you're young, like money isn't a concern just yet. If you're fortunate, like you said, it's not a concern just yet. So when
yeah.
you did maybe start to make money, right? When you began to produce a bit more wealth for yourself, what was your relationship with money like then? How did you view money back then?
Yeah, I've always been really good with money in terms of saving. And I think especially in comparison to my sister, which sorry to call my sister out, maybe we'll be able to
Sorry,
have a
Matty.
podcast so she could speak for herself. Sorry, Maddie. But in terms of if we were to compare Maddie and Maya growing up, it was like Maya saved her money, and my sister is she grew up to be a lifestyle influencer, so she gets paid to buy things, so
Yeah.
it's great. But I just because I'm a minimalist, I don't really like a
Mm,
lot of things. I like being able to save and just see how much I can accumulate. I'm really strategic with my spending, or at least I definitely used to be. I think I am still, but back then it was like I wanted to make sure I was spending it on something like special. Like I wasn't distracted by shiny object syndrome where I felt like I needed to buy everything.
that's powerful. That's powerful. And I feel like maybe God knew that was the kind of person you were, so you could be trusted with much. She's like, oh, she ain't gonna blow it. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
You'd proven
Yeah.
yourself to be trustworthy. So that's powerful.
For
Yeah.
sure. But I also think like, man, the more money you have to learn differently though. Like if
Mm,
God can definitely trust me with my gifts, he could trust me with money, but I had to learn. It's such a privileged way to look at it, but I had to learn how to be rich. Like I didn't know what to do with my money. And so it made it challenging because when you have a lot of money and you want to transition into wealth, like there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. And I didn't know how to be rich in terms of I needed to better save on my taxes. I needed to be more clear on what investments I needed to make in my business, how I needed to invest in the stock market, or should I get real estate? So there's so many, the more access I had to money, the more I had to learn how to be a better steward of it.
yeah. Yeah. That resonates. And originally, you mentioned your family actually when you were talking about growing up, because you didn't, by the grace of God, like see them struggling. You didn't have to think about money from an early age. Family, I think, is a big subject for you. I feel like with my, if I was a man and I was trying to move to you and I was trying to marry you, I just feel like I know that if I get Maya, I also get Matty, I get the nieces, I get the mom, the dad. Like it's a package deal, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really evident just from following you how close you are with family and how much it means to you. So I'm interested in what role you feel your parents maybe played in the making of your success. And was ambition something that was modeled to you when you were younger?
Mm. Yes, definitely ambition. They're a huge part of my success. But they never really actually talked about success in terms of money, which I do think is fine. I think that's great. I think money has been such a taboo topic. So it's not even specific to my parents, but I know that, we're African. And so when you're African, you have your kids, you want to compare them to everybody else's kids. And it's like, you have the family name and all of that. So there was a lot of ambition, but I do think it came from a place of this is who we are, this is the Elious name, and you need to go to a good college, and we're African, we can't embarrass ourselves. So there was a lot of, right,
God
the
forbid.
PTSD, right? Should we just go to
Basically.
therapy together, Deborah? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure you get it.
Listen, I'm ready
Uh,
when you are.
right. So, which you can imagine, it was a shock when I dropped out of college. But
Yeah.
before dropping out of college, their vision for me was to go to a good university. And I think I just threw my parents for a loop. And now that I'm older, I have so much grace for them because I'm like, what would I do if, I had a daughter that was always partying and then she dropped out of college? Like, I would be so scared. And I can get into that deeper if necessary, if we need context. But all that to say, I know my dad really wanted to instill the education in me, and my mom really wanted to instill the faith in me. So I had a really good foundation for both.
I love that you had that balance. I feel like I heard you say on a podcast episode previously that your mom did a really good job of instilling morals and your dad was more so the discipline side. And I just think
Yes.
how amazing that you just had both sides balanced out. Shout out to your parents. Shout out to them
That's my
because,
parents.
yeah, I mean, between you and your sister, it's like they did a phenomenal job. So I love to hear
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, I love to hear that. I think when we talk about money, the reason why it's so important to have this conversation as Black women and as Christian Black women specifically is because I feel that for a long time, the church has approached conversations around money in kind of a very, let's say, an unbalanced way. So here's my kind of understanding of how it's been. Once upon a time, I feel like it was either prosperity gospel, and it's like, oh, child, they're out here to take our money, run from that church, or you must be broke, and that's how you're going to get to heaven, type of thing. There was
Yeah.
not really any in between. We weren't really, until recently, I feel, really having the balanced conversations around the importance of wealth building and generational wealth and, leaving behind a legacy, even, right? I think
Mhm.
we've just kind of began to scratch that surface.
Yeah.
And so, what do you want women today, with what you know, with who you are? What do you want women, especially women of faith, to know about money and wealth building?
I want them to know that more good people should be making good money. And I know that oftentimes we create this false dichotomy of money and morality, and we think like the less money, the more moral, and the more money, the less moral. And it's like, well, what if more moral people had money? Imagine how we could shift the world because money makes
So
the world
good.
go round, right?
Hmm.
And even as believers, even as people who believe in prayer, it's like when we live in a world that is a capitalistic world and it's run by money, why wouldn't we want to match our prayer with how the world is running? You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
need to be able to have resources to have a level of impact. So I think that's really
Yes.
important. And I think as believers, we also are naturally really generous, right? We want to impact people. We want to have purpose. We just want to be generous people. And you can only be as generous as the amount of resources that you have. Unless you're just going to go around and giving endless prayers, right? But you know how we always say, like, is thoughts and prayers all we can give,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's
After a
like,
while, we need,
yeah,
yeah, something
can we
more. Yeah.
actually put some resources behind that?
Yeah.
And so I always say the more I have, the more I have to give.
Mm.
And so if I really want to live a life of generosity, I need to do whatever it takes to make sure I have the resources to be able to give in the way that I want to give.
That's beautiful. And I think that taps into the values that you have because it goes to show that a value of yours is generosity. I think that if we get honest with ourselves, maybe about why we want money, then maybe we wouldn't feel so scared to talk about money, if that makes sense. So if
Right.
your
Yeah.
motivation, right, is to be generous and is to be able to bless others, then it's like, well, of course I need to level up. Of course I need to increase my prices. Of course I need to charge my worth
Right.
because I want to be able to be a blessing. So I love that
Yeah.
you said that.
I was just going to say, I definitely think that I think the desire for money is natural. And, we've been some people have been shamed for it. But also, what's important to understand is that money makes you more of who you already are. So if you are a generous person, you will become more generous. Like when we think about who we already are, that ties to identity and it ties to our values. And so if you're not clear on your values, then you're not going to be able to be a good steward of money because you're going to be aimlessly spending it. And what I've also recognized is that it's easier to be in alignment with your values when you're not thinking about your next dollar. Like, we're not supposed to be idolizing money, but when you're broke, you have no choice but to idolize money because you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about when you're going to make money. When I
Yeah.
have profitable months, I'm not thinking about money. I get to think
Mm.
about who do I want to help? I'm going to spend time with my family. I get to honor my value of freedom and traveling and enjoying myself. But when I am, if I'm ever in a season where I'm struggling with business or I'm nervous, top of mind, my fear around money then trumps my faith in God or and what he's able to do for me. So that's why I also feel like it's really important for us to have the things that we need so we're not operating so much in fear.
So, so, so good. Oh my goodness, because what you're speaking about, what I'm hearing is like money is a revealer of character. Ultimately, money is a revealer of who we are. And it begs the
Yes.
question, like, who are you outside of living in survival mode? And I think for so
Mhm.
many of us, maybe we only know how we show up in survival mode. So it's like if all your
Yes.
needs are met, if your basic needs are met, who could you still be? Who could you then be? What would you then care about? If you're not
Yeah.
worried about paying the bills, would you suddenly feel more creative energy to start a business or to, create that nonprofit or whatever it might be? So I love that around, yeah, money being a revealer. You said a lot before actually that people of faith businesses could be far more profitable than they currently are. And some people might think that's a hot take. Personally, I completely agree. I don't even think there's anything hot to it. It's just, I think it's fact. I've seen it in my life. Dang, I've probably seen it for myself, we could be. So with the work that you do, because of course you work with so many amazing women, not just women of faith, but I know that women of faith, of course, are part of your clientele. What are
Yeah.
some of the common mistakes that you've noticed that maybe Christian business owners make when they're trying to scale? Let's talk about it.
Well, trying to scale, and tell me what you mean by scale, because I'm gonna
Sure.
possibly be defining it differently. Like when I look at
Yeah.
scale, I don't instantly think about revenue. I think about revenue in terms of growing the business versus scaling the business, which are two different things. So I want to make sure I'm
Got
answering
you.
the question accurately.
Got you. No, I'm so glad you made that distinction. So the way that I'm seeing scale in this conversation is a case of is more revenue based actually. So it's more what you referred to before. So how those Christian owners who are maybe going from, okay, for the last 5 years I've been making this amount of money. It's not enough. It's still not,
Yep.
enough for the overheads. How do I increase how much I'm making? What are the common mistakes that people make that kind of keep them
Mm.
stuck earning the same amount?
Yes. Okay, I want to actually answer the question about scale. I want to
Yeah.
define the difference between grow and scale, just so there's
Mm,
context for the listeners. So,
yeah.
when you're in a place where you're not making enough money, you need to focus on growing your business, where it's like, how do I get more clients? Do I need to increase my rates? How do I become more profitable? How can I make more money essentially? When you're ready to scale your business, you are at a place where you are profitable, you are making a lot of money, and you are at capacity. You are not able to receive any more money because you either ran out of time, you ran out of products, whatever it is. So scale is when you have reached capacity. You don't have a money problem, you have a time or resource problem. I need more products, I need more people, or I need more time. And so I want to define that because I do see that there can be some mental blocks in growing as a Christian woman
Yeah.
and scaling as a Christian woman.
Yeah.
When it
It's
comes
good.
to growing your business as a Christian woman and wanting to increase your revenue and become more profitable, some of the common mistakes that I see are people that are like, I just want to help people or I don't want to pimp my gifts. And I'm like, where did you even hear that nonsense? It's nonsense. Like
Yeah.
just stop. Because you don't apply for a job and say, "Oh, I don't want to pimp my skills and ask them for a check." Like, no. You use your gifts so that you can create abundance in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think that we have this mindset of, again, the money and morality, like the more I charge, then I'm not a good person. And if we separate it and just understand I am a good person, but I need to learn how to operate in the marketplace, then the only thing I need to focus on is making sure that the money I charge needs to be in alignment with the value that I offer. And two things to understand about that is, one, you do need to be very clear on the value that you offer. And so don't devalue yourself. But two, you also need to understand that you are not operating in integrity when you charge people beneath your value, because what you're charging in dollar amount should be in alignment with the value that you are offering. And so we have this fear, we actually have the opposite fear of, I'm overcharging and I'm not providing enough value, when the reality typically is you are over giving on value, on time, on effort, on your years of experiences, and you are undercharging yourself. And that is operating outside of integrity. So I'll say that's the biggest mistake for growth.
Wow. I wasn't ready for that. You preached a whole sermon. Honestly, we could end it here. But no, that was so good. First of all, just that distinction between growth and scaling. I think that alone would help so many listeners to kind of understand what the problem is that they're truly experiencing. I think when we have the right language for what we're going through, it's empowering. So that's powerful. And then just there definitely is that occurrence of, us as Christian women and women, I think, by and large, just almost feeling apologetic for what we're charging, and often thinking, oh, it's too high. We're often kind of underestimating and undermining ourselves. And it's interesting because it actually flows so well into the next question I had prepared for you, which is just around, when you encounter, because I'm sure you do, I know I do, when you encounter people who come to you and they say, Maya, I am struggling to find or to attract high value clients. I set my price. This is the price. But everyone that comes up to me is like, this is too high. They try and bring it down. They want a good deal, etc., etc. What advice do you give to them in that position? Is it a them problem? Is it the clients? Like, am I the drama?
Right.
What's actually
So
happening there?
they're struggling to attract high value clients. So, as a business coach, I'm going to look at data. And I think this is something that we often miss because we operate so heavily in our emotions. We had 3 conversations with people. We gave them our price and they said no. And they said, nobody's buying. 3 people ain't nobody. Okay. Come to me when you have had 50 sales conversations and only 2 people converted. Then we can say, okay, now we have data. Now we can say, based on your conversion rate, here's what's happening. So that's the very first thing. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yes, I need the advice on how to get more high value clients because nobody is buying. Well, we need to ask, how many people is nobody?
Yes, let's
how many
quantify it.
nobodies did you actually get in front of?
Yes, yeah.
So you are the problem then if you are not getting in front of
Sorry, not
people.
sorry.
So if you haven't had enough sales conversations, then it's an indication that you need to become more visible, and you need to market yourself more, and you need to create opportunities where you can present your offer to people. So our clients typically do that through sales calls, getting discovery calls booked, or doing webinars, just trying to have as many sales conversations as possible. Now, if you happen to be listening and you're like, okay, Maya, I've had 30 sales calls, right? I had a webinar and 50 women were on there. And so I presented my offer in front of 50 women and nobody bought. Okay, so now we could say we have a quantitative data point where we can say, all right, I need to figure out, was it the wrong group of people, meaning it was the wrong audience, or was it the right audience and the wrong message and the wrong offer? So those are some things that we need to look at. And you're not really going to figure that out without doing any market research. And so what I tell my clients to do, whether they're on a sales call or if they're doing a webinar and they send out a follow-up email, is to ask people why they didn't buy. How will you know why they didn't buy without asking them why they didn't buy?
Get the data.
And I think sometimes we don't think about that because, we might feel embarrassed or we might feel pushy or we might feel salesy, but it is your responsibility to get into the mind of your ideal client or your ideal buyer so you can better communicate to them. Because if you truly believe that your product or your service can impact them, it can transform their life, their business, their finances, their relationship, whatever your industry is, you have to do your due diligence to say, how can I be responsible enough with my messaging to make sure that it's speaking to them? So when they are presented this offer, they're clear on the value and they're excited to say yes.
So good. I think it's so interesting that you said if you truly believe that your product or your service can transform them. Because I think sometimes that is the gap that we don't want to admit, right? It's that actually, if I'm really honest with myself, I do doubt in what I'm offering. Like, and if you yourself have doubts in your offer, then you shouldn't really be surprised if other people do. That means there's some holes, and maybe we actually just need to improve the offer, and or you need to get confident about your offer first. So I love that you said that, and in all of the different examples that you gave as well, all I kept kind of hearing is get the data first, like, or the data, as you would say, but get the data, right, to actually prove, like, get the evidence to support what is happening or what you say is happening. So I think that's key. That's really good. Speaking about wealth a little bit more, because I know that's one of the topics that you speak to so well. Well, I've always said this in conversation with other people, specifically my husband, actually, that one of the key markers for me of wealth. So when I'll know and when I feel most wealthy, one of those key markers is having the freedom of choice. So it's options. That is huge for me. So whether it is being able to choose where I shop, what I eat, how I gift someone, like I want to get them this thing and I actually can get them it. I don't have to settle for something a bit less. That's when I feel, the most wealthy. With you and the journey that you've been on, we spoke about childhood Maya, who didn't necessarily have concerns about money, to now becoming, of course, a multi-million-dollar CEO. What today does wealthy feel like for you?
Definitely the freedom. Definitely the freedom. Like earlier when I talked about being rich versus being wealthy, I think about, of course, the freedom, but I think about time. And I think being rich is about having a lot of money, being wealthy is about having a lot of time. And so, being rich is like, okay, I need to trade my time for money, or it's knowing I only have enough money for this month, or I only have enough money for maybe these next 3 months. When you're wealthy, you really want to be set where you're like, I could do whatever with my time and my money is going to make money for me. So that's really how I think about it. So when I think about the things that make me feel wealthy, it's the amount of time that I can spend with my family. It's being able to travel with them. It's being able to, like, my niece came over here the other day because I got her hair braided before she went back to school. But then when she was done, she was like, Auntie Maya, let's go to Target. Like
Oh,
the fact that I could do that in the middle
yeah,
of the day and I'm not worrying about who my time belongs to.
yeah.
So I think about those things, like that is what truly matters to me. Being able to choose how I spend my time is what makes me feel wealthy.
Yeah, time. I love the distinction you made between being rich and being wealthy. That's really, really good. I think that will help people also kind of define for themselves and ask themselves the question of what is the difference for them, because maybe some of us are we're actually chasing after being rich and we haven't really thought about what wealth looks and feels like to us. So I love
Yeah.
that. Absolutely love that. So we're
Yeah.
going to pivot a little bit and talk about purpose, right? And also just how fluid purpose can be. So one of the things that I always say is that purpose is fluid in that the core I found often remains the same, but the expression of it tends to change depending on the season. And I'll give an example.
Yes.
So for me, once upon a time, I used to be a spoken word artist, which now when I think about, I'm like, child, that's kind of cringe. Like, I can't believe I did that. I got on stages and just bled my heart in front of people, but it was a great time. We had fun. But I look back and I think, okay, I used to share intimate parts of myself and maybe even some like aha moments through my poetry on stage. That's not a thing I do anymore. But now today, I'm still doing that. I'm still sharing intimate parts of myself and these aha moments, but now it's in the format of a podcast like today or writing for my newsletter. And that's what I mean when I say, like, I think purpose is fluid, in that the expression changes. So then I think
Mhm.
about you and I think about Maya and I'm like, okay, this is someone who started out as a designer, designing websites, MySpace websites, mind you, which Gen Z, I know you might not know what that is, but just know it was like the thing in our days. But you began designing websites for, I believe, as low as $35. And then fast forward to today, and in your journey, you are now the CEO of a multi-million-dollar coaching company, also with an activewear brand, Rebellious Fit, under your belt as well, because why not just throw a product in there too? So
Right.
what I want to ask you is, how have you been able to evolve as a business owner and a brand while still staying true to who you are? We will get straight back to this interview in just a moment. But before we do, are you subscribed? That is the number one question that I need to know. Look, we can't enter into a serious long-term relationship if I don't get some commitment from you. So make sure that you go ahead and you hit the subscribe button so that you can receive all of my videos straight to your feed. And while we're here, why not give this video a thumbs up? If you're enjoying this interview, then make sure to smash that button. For now, let's get back into this conversation.
Yeah. So I've definitely evolved in terms of my delivery of purpose, as you mentioned. When I first started, I was creating MySpace pages. And honestly, even when I started, my mind didn't really connect MySpace page designer to purpose until I really started to kind of see why people wanted it. And people essentially, they wanted to be seen a certain way online. I worked with a lot of like the reality TV star models on the dating shows from VH1 back in the day that we all would watch, like Real Chance of Love, For the Love of Ray J, those shows.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, they all want to look a certain way. They want to depict themselves a certain way, which is essentially what branding is. And so I recognized I was helping people build their brand. Then when I started doing actual like web and graphic design and helping people build their business and take their ideas and put it out into the world, I'm like, okay, I am helping people do something that is meaningful to them. So shifting from MySpace design to then web design, and then recognizing, okay, my clients have this website, but now they need people coming to their website and buying from them. Now they need help with marketing. So then transitioning into teaching, content creation. I was a blogger. So just the different evolutions, the more I grew, the more I was able to evolve in my purpose, because I'm only going to be able to help people based on my own level of capacity. And so my expansion has definitely allowed my purpose to evolve. And then I think also just seeing the evolution of me as a CEO, now going from, now I don't just lead clients, but I lead a team, which has been it's been so challenging, because leadership is just completely different than just being a service provider, than just being, a solopreneur and somebody that makes money online. So it's definitely been interesting, and just kind of navigating, okay, who am I? How do I want to be as a CEO? Dealing with imposter syndrome, because I just look at myself as a regular person, like people would be like, Maya, I know you're so busy. And I'm like, I sit at home and I watch Hulu. Like, I'm actually not that busy. So just really kind of trying to understand, how do I want to be perceived without it being like false, and then just keeping the main thing in terms of who do I want to serve, and how do I need to show up to be able to do that?
That's so interesting. And I'm glad you were talking about how you want to be perceived as well, because one of the things that I've observed about you and I love is that regardless of wherever you're showing up, I feel like you've mastered the ability to show up authentically, right?
Thank
So, and if we think of like, let's take an impact weekend, I don't know, maybe 1 second we're twerking, the next second we're worshiping. Oh no, wait, hold on, she's dropping gems about business. Like, I can't keep up what's happening. But also, this is actually how humans are. Like, we are multifaceted. There's many sides to us, right? And what I love about the way that you show up is, I feel like it allows other people to show up as themselves too. And so I'm interested again, like being, going from the person that was maybe just building websites, or it was still a purpose related thing. We can see that now, but to being a CEO and running a team, like, how were you able to shed like preconceived notions about what a business owner must look like or act like? And how were you able to still just be Maya? How have you got there? If you feel like you've got there.
Right. Every day I'm figuring it out. Preconceived notions, I guess, in terms of maybe like my audience or my clients. I mean, I say this from a place of just the reality, and not from a place of like ego or being cocky, but it's like, how can you tell me what a business owner should look like. I'm helping you build your business. So it's more so just kind of like we're all figuring this out as we go. I don't feel like I had to overcome that. Maybe more so with my parents. I think they thought that I should look a certain way. When I started blogging and I started transitioning from design to digital products and coaching and online membership, I started sharing my income reports, like here's how much I'm making as a designer, here's how much I'm making with my digital products. And it was far more taboo back then than it is now, right? Like we see
Yeah.
ads all the time, like make $100,000 in your
Yeah.
business, or here's my 5-step process to having a 5-figure month, all of that. It was so much more taboo back then. And my parents would be like, you don't see people going to work and then posting their paycheck online. Like, why are you doing this? And so it's like they couldn't understand. And I think it's just kind of letting go of having to explain yourself, which was very challenging for me. I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah.
I wanted to make
Same.
sure my parents were pleased with me. I think, when you kind of grow up in a culture where, they part of your value is based on your achievement, you end up being very performative, which makes you a people pleaser. So they're the ones that are watching me. Like the people online are watching me in admiration. My parents are watching me out of fear. Like, what is going on? Our daughter's on the internet telling people how much money she makes. And so I think I just had to start trusting my own decisions. And this is something that, again, I'm learning every single day, trusting my own decisions. And I would rather be wrong in a decision that I made for myself than wrong in a decision because I was, trying to people please.
So good, because also the last one, it breeds resentment, because when you
Oh,
fail
yeah.
in the thing, you're like, you realize I wasn't even doing it for me anyways. It's like I did
Right.
this for you people and now I'm on my face looking silly, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right. So now I'm
yeah.
beefing with my family.
Yeah. It's like, and they didn't even really ask you to. Like, you have the agency to choose what you do, definitely. And I think we were speaking previously about like how your career has evolved and the ways in which you do business. And I think that oftentimes we as women and honestly just people are sometimes afraid to pivot and try something new in the way that you have done. You've shown that through a rebellious fit, right? But sometimes I think we're afraid to try something new, in case it doesn't work out. But I think also because we've attached our sense of self and our identity to what we do. And so it's like, if it doesn't work out, I haven't worked out. Like, I'm a failure. If this business idea fails, I'm a failure. And so as someone that's navigated, these different pivots, and is still showing up strong, how do you stay grounded in who you are outside of Maya, the business owner? And how has that impacted your view on failure, if at all?
Oh man. Yeah, I think there are just so many different seasons of it. I think that's what I'm learning. You have your winning seasons, you have your seasons where you're like, dang, I'm not doing as well as I thought I should. And I think it's learning how to look at how far you've come. I think it's really a perspective thing, right?
Yeah.
Like why do I care if I fail? Like you said, am I attaching this to who I am? What is the worst that could happen? Sometimes we create these scenarios in our head that just are not accurate.
Yeah.
And I heard this quote the other day that said, fear is just mismanagement of our imagination. And we
Wow.
imagine things that are just
That's
not
good.
going to happen.
Yeah. And it's like,
They're
if you
just not
can use your imagination to imagine the worst, you can also use it to imagine what could go right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm reading this book right now called 10x is easier than 2x. And they have this concept, and they also wrote a book on it. It's by
Is it Myron?
Ben Hardy
Okay.
and Dan Sullivan.
Yes.
And so they have this chapter in there where they talk about the gap and the gain and how a lot of people live in the gap. And the gap is where you look at how much further you have to go, and the gain is looking at how far you've come. And a lot of us are living in the gap where we are beating ourselves up because we are comparing ourselves to an ideal instead of looking at the evidence of what we've accomplished as evidence that we can become our future selves. And so I think building a mental habit of recognizing how far you've come so you can feel confident that you are equipped to get to the next level, even with failure. Like if I could document all of the failure I've overcome, failure would be so much less intimidating because I have evidence of overcoming failure and turning it into a win.
Yeah, I love that. The gap and the gain. The gap and the gain. I need to check out that book. It's actually like the third time I've heard someone recommend it. So I'm like,
Oh,
okay, I think it's a
okay.
sign. Yeah, yeah. One of my friends went to a Myron Golden conference where he
Mm,
recommended it massively. So yeah, I'll be checking that out, as I'm sure everyone else on listening to this will be.
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about obedience. Okay, as Christian women, again,
Mm,
it's the unavoidable thing. You know what I mean? It's like we just cannot always necessarily do things our way. One of the things that I love that you shared on Instagram a couple of months ago is you said God can trust me with my gift because he sees my obedience, right? And we
mm.
mentioned it earlier as well. I'm wondering, can you share with us a time in your life where obedience was hard? It was hard to obey because I think there's sometimes obedience is like, okay, this is actually an exciting idea. So yeah, God, I'm gonna do it. And then other times it's like, God, really? You want me to do what? To who? How? Can you think
Mm.
back to maybe a time in your life where obedience was hard? And can you share maybe what helped you persevere?
Oh man. Where has obedience been hard for me? I think obedience has been hard for me in terms of forgiveness. I love holding on to something. I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. Um, and it's so harmful for two reasons. One, because the person has already moved on and
Facts.
you're still here suffering because you want to hold
Absolutely.
on to it. And I think a part of holding on to something is my desire to be in control of everything.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the person that has to punish you. So if I hold on to it, then it's because you deserve to be punished. And it's
Yeah.
like, bro, you ain't nobody's God. Decide who gets to be punished. It
Yeah.
is what it is. Like let
Yeah.
God, do
Let him
his
be
thing.
God. Yeah.
Let him be God.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely being obedient with that. And what's helped me with it has definitely been therapy and the perspective that she has helped me get. And, I remember just going through something in my business that it was a one-time incident, but it felt so damaging in the moment. And because I replayed that scenario in my head over and over and over, it lasted longer than what it really needed to. And it caused more damage to my self-esteem than it needed to. And it caused more damage to my business than it needed to, because it's like, had I learned to forgive faster, I could have gotten over it and become the person that I needed to be to grow my company or to, just experience life differently. But I'm walking around as this resentful person, and you can see, first of all, just lack of forgiveness is just a miracle blocker.
Yeah.
It's
Facts.
a wealth blocker. So
Yes.
it absolutely affected how I showed up as a leader. It affected how I showed up as a coach. It affected how I showed up with making money. And so just knowing that something that I could have maybe gotten over with therapy in 3 months affected me for over a year. It's like, girl, you better learn to let go.
So that you can actually move on faster and be who God wants you to be in this season. And I
Yes.
love that you shared about like the ways that because we all do it, we extend our suffering. Sometimes it's like,
Mm.
it kind of reminds me of maybe the Israelites. And it's like, this journey was only supposed to take you like a few days. But since y'all want to do it the hard way, we gonna do the 40 years, And it's like
Yes.
God's desire for us is actually for us to get to that place of wholeness and of healing so much faster. But being gracious, I love that you were like gracious with yourself in that process and still showed yourself compassion in your process of learning to forgive. So thank you for sharing that. As we're moving kind of towards the end of this interview, I want to talk a little bit about maintaining, right? So being able to actually maintain a thing. And one of my favorite scriptures is in Galatians 5:7, and it says this. I got my best reading voice on. It says, you were running the race so well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? And one of the ways that I tend to interpret it, although it has its own context, of course, but is like when we're running, as in like we're achieving a thing, but then something gets in the way. Maybe it's a distraction, maybe it's procrastination, fear, comparison, whatever the case might be. We know that according to research, in the United States, 20% of businesses fail in their first year, right?
Mm.
Which makes it pretty tricky. So when you look at someone like yourself who's been able to have a successful business for as long as you have, we can see that you're someone that's been able to maintain. And it's one thing to start great things, but I think it's another to be able to maintain. So when we
Mm.
think about character, you spoke in your previous answer, you spoke about the person you needed to become. Who have you had to become in order to actually maintain the success?
Oof. The person you need to be able to become is somebody who is very growth minded and vision minded. When the word says, without vision, my people perish,
Yeah.
if you don't have a clear vision of who you are, who you desire to be, what you want for your business, it's going to fall apart because you're just aimlessly walking around. You have no goal, you have no target, and there's nothing to maintain because it's not in alignment with your vision. And what I've recognized with businesses is that one of three things is going to happen. You're either going to experience regression, you're going to regress, you're going to go backwards. And this typically happens because you're not making enough sales, which might be tied to not having a clear vision, not having the right marketing, not showing up consistently, fear, whatever it is. But when your business starts to go backwards, and it happens, right? We're seeing it in the marketplace, it's going backwards. So it's natural to have fluctuations, but to consistently regress is a sign of a missing system, and a sign of a very clear gap and problem that needs to be fixed. So you could find yourself in a place of regression. And I have had seasons in my business like that. I don't think it's not talked about a lot. It's not talked about very publicly because we all want to see the wins and I'm profitable and I'm a multi-seven-figure CEO. But it's like some months it's like, hello, does anybody work here? And it's like, well, wait, what happened? And we have to look at the evidence of, okay, well, what work did I not do?
Yes.
Because we can't say what work did I do because clearly something happened where you just
missing.
didn't do work. Or you didn't do the right work. So you either didn't do any work or you didn't do the right work. That you're going to experience regression. The other thing that you will experience is retention. And this is where maintenance happens. But if you are trying to grow, maintenance is only but so exciting, right? If I'm trying to, with Black girls, we always trying to grow our hair and we have to worry about retention, right? And it's like, well, dang, every time I go back in to get my trim, my hair is actually getting short, right? Our hair is either regressing, it's getting longer. It's like, wait a minute, what is like trims do I need to get? What is the right protection style that I need to have? What is going on here? And so you could find yourself in a season where you are just retaining, right? There's a lot of retention in your business. You're maintaining your business, but you're like, but I'm not experiencing growth. I want to experience growth. And so retention typically happens when you don't have a growth mindset. You haven't implemented anything new. You're literally doing the same thing. So whatever you did 3 years ago, if you're still doing the same thing 3 years later, you can't have an expectation of growth. You yourself, you have to grow. And when you grow, you come up with new ideas, you show up differently, you make better and more vision-minded decisions. And so then the third thing that you'll experience are results, right? Positive results, trending upward, growing, transformation in your business. And the results is going to be just you improving, your systems improving, you improving as a leader, your team improving. And so when I think about maintaining, I think at the very least, you need to have a growth mindset and your goal should be able to take that maintenance to grow it. Because even when we think about the parable of the talents, like we're not supposed to keep the thing that was given to us. We're supposed to go invest it and to grow. And so, those are the three things that typically happen with our hair in our business.
There's a 2-in-1 lesson for you ladies right there. Maybe it's a sign you need to go and get that trim. Don't avoid the temporary regression because it will lead to future progress. Yeah.
That is so true too. It's like, you might need to trim some things in your business, right? We be trying to keep those scraggly dead ends to say we got length. It is like, baby girl, let it go.
That is a TWA.
Fuller, thicker hair.
Yes, come on. You better preach right now. That is good. That is so good. Yeah, sometimes you got to trim the fat. Yes. Yeah, sometimes you got to cut something away for something to grow. I love that. So looking forward towards the future, I want to talk a little bit about kind of where things are headed for you, or where you'd like them to be headed, what hopes you have. There's a famous quote by Jeff Bezos. I'm sure you already know it because you're a branding queen. But Jeff Bezos once said, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Which made me think a little bit about kind of legacy. It made me think, okay, what would people say about me when I'm literally not in the room, as in not here, right? When I don't exist anymore. So as a near closing question, I'd love to ask you, when all is said and done, what do you, Maya, hope to be remembered for?
My desire is to be remembered for helping women of faith be clear on their value, um, be clear on their value and be confident in their value enough to articulate it and to monetize it, to build a wealthy life as a result of being clear on their value and leveraging their gifts.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And
Of
in
course.
closing, I've been asking you tons of questions. So I'd like to actually throw it back to you to ask yourself a question, actually. So the
Okay.
scenario is this. Okay. So we go into the future, maybe 10 years from now, and you're able to ask 10 years later, Maya, any one question. Okay. So if you could ask your future self one question 10 years from now, what would that be?
I would probably ask her, girl, what did you do on August 7th, 2024 to get to where you are right now?
Oh, I love that. I
I
love
mean, I
that.
might also say, what dating app did you log into? What lounge did you go
How
to
did
meet
you
your
meet
husband
him?
as
Yeah,
well?
yeah.
Um, so either, girl, did you figure out some things you want to do for your business, or did you find the husband?
Yeah.
But where is he so we can expedite this process?
Got you, got you. Some great questions there. Amazing. Well, I look forward to, being able to continue to follow your journey online and hopefully see some of the answers to those questions in the future as well. But for now, honestly, Maya, you are amazing. I just want to give you your flowers while you're here on this call. Like, thank you for all that you share with us, for how much you give to others. I don't know if ever there's a time in your journey where you kind of feel like, is this resonating? Is this working? But I just want you to know that it is, and it's touching those of us even all the way here in the UK, and
Oh,
inspiring us to just get up and use the gifts that we've been given and give God something to work with. So thank you so much for all that you do, sincerely, and thank you for joining us on this podcast. It's been amazing.
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I had so much
Oh,
fun.
I'm so glad. Our pleasure.